Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're going exploring some really dark stuff. We're going to be looking at how investigators actually took down the biggest child abuse site on the dark web. And get this, they did it by tracing Bitcoin transactions.
Yeah, it's a truly fascinating case. A lot of criminals thought Bitcoin was anonymous. But turns out the blockchain, it's a public ledger that records every single transaction.
Right, so there's actually a permanent trail, and that ended up being the key to cracking this whole thing wide open.
It really shows how these criminals underestimated how transparent the blockchain actually is.
Yeah.
I mean, they really thought they could operate in the shadows. But every single transaction they made left a trace.
Exactly. And the crazy thing is we're going to be diving into an article called Inside the Bitcoin Bus that took down the web's biggest child abuse site, and you will not believe the scale of this operation.
It's really mind-boggling, the complexity of the number of people involved. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, and what I find so interesting too is a cast of characters. I mean, we've got Jonathan Levin, who co-founded Chainalysis, this company that specializes in tracking cryptocurrency. And then we've got these two IRS agents, Chris Janjuski and Tigran Gambarian. Who had thought that IRS agents would become heroes in the fight against child exploitation?
It's one of those things where you think the IRS, like, what are they doing in a child abuse investigation?
Right.
But when you think about it, it makes sense. It's all about following the money, right?
Yeah.
And in the world of cybercrime, cryptocurrency is king.
Totally. Okay, so let's go back to 2017, Jonathan Levin's meeting with the UK's National Crime Agency. And they are investigating this really disturbing website on the dark web called Welcome to Video. It was basically a marketplace where people were trading horrific videos of child sexual abuse, and they were using Bitcoin to do it. The NCA actually found this site while investigating another offender, Matthew Falder, who was a user.
And the thing is, Welcome to Video wasn't just a place where people could find existing material. The site was actively encouraging the creation of new content.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they had this thing called a uniqueness check. So you couldn't upload a video if it was already on the site. So that basically forced users to create new and even more horrific content.
That is so disturbing.
It's truly awful.
So Levin starts analyzing the site's Bitcoin activity using Chainalysis' software called Reactor. And this software is amazing because it allows investigators to visualize the flow of cryptocurrency, like almost a map of transactions. And guess what he finds?
So many of these users were making really basic mistakes. They were sending Bitcoin directly from exchanges straight to the site's wallets.
I mean, that's like leaving a trail of breadcrumbs.
Literally. They
Yeah.
basically handed investigators a map to their front door.
It almost seems too easy, right? But I guess that's the thing with the blockchain. It's all out there in the open. Every transaction is recorded, and it's publicly viewable.
Exactly. And if you know what you're looking for, it's not that hard to follow the trail.
So Levin realizes just how serious this is, and he reaches out to Chris Janchevsky and Tigran Gambarian. These two IRS agents, they were known for their expertise in tracing cryptocurrency.
Right. But at the time, they were actually in Bangkok, fresh off the takedown of Alphabet. Talk about good timing. Right?
Wow, what a coincidence.
Yeah, they were in the right place at the right time. And they immediately assembled this team, including prosecutor Zia Faruqi and analyst Aaron Bice, to tackle this new challenge.
But you know what I don't think people realize is the emotional toll that an investigation like this can take on a team. I mean, none of them had any experience with child sexual abuse cases. Can you imagine the impact of having to look at that kind of content?
I can't even imagine.
Yeah.
It's just devastating. They had to spend hours reviewing these disturbing videos and images to build their case. This wasn't just some financial crime, They were confronted with the very real horror of child exploitation, and that had to weigh heavily on them.
Absolutely. So initially, they focused on tracing the Bitcoin outflows from the site, and they were able to connect those flows to exchanges in Korea, which is where they got their first big break. Gambarian, he had this extensive network in the Bitcoin community, so he was able to speed up the process of getting information from these exchanges.
He was like the ultimate networker.
Nice.
Yeah. And he also got really lucky. He was browsing the Welcome to Video site just out of curiosity, and he decided to view page source, which is basically where you can see the underlying code of a website.
Okay, hold on. Explain that to me like I'm 5.
Okay, sure. So imagine you're looking at this beautiful tapestry.
Oh, okay.
Okay, view page source is like being able to peek behind the tapestry and see the individual threads that hold it all together. And in this case, those threads revealed something crucial.
What was it?
Buried within the code, Gambarian found the site's IP address.
Which is like a digital street address, right?
Exactly. It identifies a specific computer on the internet. And you want to know the best part?
What?
It was located in South Korea.
So they had the location of the server, but they still needed to figure out who was behind it all.
Right. So armed with this IP address, they issued subpoenas to the Korean exchanges, demanding information about the people sending Bitcoin to the site. And wouldn't you know it, they got another break?
I bet they found the mastermind.
They found a name. Sun Jong-woo, a young man living in South Korea.
Wow.
Initially, they thought his father might be involved, but as the investigation progressed, it became clear that Sun was acting alone.
So they have the site administrator, they know where the server is, mission accomplished.
Not quite. Taking down the site was just the first step. To really stop this network of abuse, they needed to identify and arrest the users.
Right, because every single username on that site represented a potential abuser.
Exactly. And they were determined to bring them to justice.
That brings us to the next phase of the investigation, which focuses on those high-priority targets. We'll dive into those stories in part 2 of this deep dive, so stay tuned.
As the team started digging deeper into this welcome to video user base, they realized they were dealing with a global network, individuals from all walks of life. But they knew they had limited time and resources.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, how do you even begin to prioritize targets in a case like this? Every username could represent a child at risk.
It had to be incredibly difficult. They focused on the users who posed the most immediate threat.
Yeah.
Those who were actively uploading new content, particularly if they appeared to be producing their own material.
So basically targeting the people who were directly involved in creating new abuse.
Exactly.
Were there any particular cases that stood out during this phase of the investigation?
One that really shook the team was a former congressional staffer living in Washington, D.C.
Oh, wow.
They traced his Bitcoin payments to the site. And through further investigation, they found out that he'd actually traveled to the Philippines, which is a known hub for sex tourism.
It's chilling to think that someone in a position of power like that could be involved in something so horrific. What happened to him?
Tragically, he ended up taking his own life.
Oh, no.
After being stopped by Customs and Border Protection when he returned to the U.S.
Wow.
It was a really stark reminder of just how devastating the consequences of these crimes can be, both for the victims and for the perpetrators.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking to think about, behind every username, there's a real person with a complex story. And sometimes those stories end in tragedy.
Absolutely.
So were there any other high priority targets that they were focusing on?
Yeah, there was another case, an assistant principal at a high school in Georgia.
Oh, my gosh.
It just shows you that these perpetrators can be anyone, right?
Yeah.
Even people we trust with our children's education.
That's terrifying. What was it like for the agents when they finally confronted this guy?
I think it was really surreal for them, to arrest this man at his home, surrounded by his family. Janjewski actually talked about this. He said it made him realize that these perpetrators aren't just faceless usernames. They're real people living in communities, potentially harming those around them.
That's a really powerful point. So they're making progress with these high-profile targets, but what about Sun Jong-woo, the site administrator? Were they any closer to taking him down?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. In fact, the operation to apprehend him was already underway. Faruqi Janchevsky and Tomsi, who was another key investigator on the case, flew to Seoul to meet with the Korean National Police Agency.
Wait, Tomsi, is that the investigator they called Octopus Guy? I remember reading about him.
That's him.
He had this incredible knack for building relationships with international law enforcement agencies, right? I think there was a story about some memorable seafood dinner.
Yeah, he was known for his diplomacy, and it proved invaluable in this case. Thanks to Tomsi's efforts, they were able to secure the cooperation of Korea's top investigative team, and they placed Sun Jong-woo under surveillance.
Oh, wow. So they were closing in on him. Did everything go according to plan?
Well, not exactly. As often happens in these types of investigations, there were some unexpected twists and turns. The initial plan was to arrest Sun at his apartment, but he unexpectedly drove to Seoul for the weekend.
Oh, that must have thrown a wrench in their plans.
You bet it was a mad dash to try to get to Sun's apartment before he returned. Janchevsky was actually battling a nasty cold at the time, and he ended up riding in a car with the HSI liaison for hours through pouring rain just to get to the stakeout location.
Talk about dedication.
Yeah, they finally arrived at Sun's apartment building, which is this 10-story tower in a fairly rural area, and they waited anxiously for him to return. Hours passed, and just when they were starting to lose hope, they spotted his car pulling into the parking garage.
It must felt like forever. This is it, the moment of truth. Did they manage to apprehend him?
A team of Korean agents had been waiting for him, and they moved in swiftly, arresting him at his front door. They then spent hours searching his apartment, meticulously looking for the server that housed the Welcome to Video database.
Oh my gosh, the tension must have been palpable. I can't even imagine. Where were the American investigators during all of this?
Because of legal complexities, only the Korean National Police were authorized to actually enter Sun's apartment. So Janjeski and the others were stuck outside, anxiously awaiting news.
That must have been incredibly frustrating knowing that the key to this entire investigation was just out of reach.
I bet. But the Korean police were kind enough to give Janjeski a virtual tour of the apartment via FaceTime.
That's so nice of them.
Right, and that's when he saw it.
The server.
The server.
Yeah.
It was just this ordinary-looking desktop computer sitting on the floor of Sun's bedroom. Its case was open, revealing a jumble of hard drives.
Wow.
It was an incredibly unassuming machine, yet it had been the nerve center of this global criminal enterprise.
It's a chilling reminder that the darkest corners of the internet can exist anywhere, even in the most mundane settings. So they have Sun Jong-woo and they have his server, the heart of the Welcome to Video operation. What did they find on that server? What happened next?
That's where things get even more intense. We'll dive into the aftermath of the raid and the global impact of this investigation in part 3 of this deep dive.
Okay, so we left off with the investigators finally getting their hands on Sun Jong-woo's server. What did they find?
It was horrifying, really.
Yeah.
Over 250,000 videos of child sexual abuse material. It was the largest collection they'd ever seen in a case like this.
250,000 videos. I think it's hard to even comprehend that number. That represents so much suffering.
And remember how we talked about that uniqueness check feature, the thing that encouraged users to upload new content?
Right.
Well, when they compared these videos with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children's database, they found that almost half of them were new.
So this wasn't just a marketplace for existing content. Welcome to Video was fueling the creation of new abuse.
It was a really disturbing discovery, and it made it even more urgent for them to identify any children who were still at risk.
Okay, so they've got the site's user database, and they've been tracking all those Bitcoin payments. They can finally start connecting the dots, right?
Exactly. They could see which usernames were making Bitcoin payments, and from there they could trace those payments back to real people.
So they had a roadmap to a global network of child exploitation. Did they try to coordinate some kind of massive international takedown?
That would have been really difficult to pull off, given the sheer number of suspects and the fact that they were scattered all over the world. Instead, they focused on getting this information into the hands of law enforcement agencies who could actually track down these individuals. They shared everything they learned with HSI local police departments, international agencies. They basically became a clearinghouse for leads.
Wow, that must have been a logistical nightmare. Were those agencies even equipped to handle cryptocurrency investigations? It seems like such specialized knowledge.
You're telling me a lot of those agencies were totally unfamiliar with Bitcoin and blockchain analysis? So the team had to do a lot of hand-holding. They were basically training investigators on the fly.
Yeah.
You know?
So it was a massive undertaking, but they knew they had to do everything they could to bring these abusers to justice. What were some of the outcomes? Did they manage to rescue any children?
Thankfully, yes. In total, they were able to remove 23 children from abusive situations.
That's incredible.
But each case was so different and had its own unique challenges. For example, there was this one case in Kansas involving an IT worker whose wife ran a home daycare for infants and toddlers.
Oh my God, that is terrifying.
They actually found remnants of deleted files on his computer that matched records from the Welcome to Video server. It's just a reminder that these predators can be lurking anywhere, even in the places we think are safe.
It's every parent's worst nightmare. Were there any other cases that really stood out to you?
Yeah, there was this case in New York. This young man, he'd sexually assaulted a family friend's daughter, and he was secretly recording another young girl through her webcam. And in this case, it was actually the suspect's own father who turned him in after the agents explained what was going on.
Wow, that must have been an incredibly difficult decision for that father.
Absolutely. And it really highlights the importance of accountability, even when it involves somebody you love.
And unfortunately, I'm guessing not every case had a happy ending.
Sadly, no. There was this repeat offender in Washington, D.C. who tried to kill himself when the HSI team showed up at his house.
Oh, no.
Luckily, one of the agents had medical training and was able to save him.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
Yeah, it was a close call. But you know what's really crazy about this case? They found over 450,000 hours of child sexual abuse material on his computer.
That is just unbelievable.
including some of the videos that were uploaded by that Border Patrol agent from Texas.
Wait, the agent who is downloading all that horrific content while working for the agency that's supposed to be investigating these crimes, that's just insane.
I know, right? It's just appalling. And it makes you
Wow.
realize how widespread this problem really is.
Absolutely. So they were making arrests all over the U.S., but what about the international cases? Did they get any results from the leads they shared with other countries?
Oh yeah, this investigation had a huge global reach. There were arrests in dozens of countries: Czech Republic, Spain, Brazil, Ireland, France, Canada, the UK. They even caught a Hungarian ambassador to Peru
You've got to be kidding me. What?
who had downloaded content from Welcome to Video. And they found over 19,000 images of child sexual abuse material on his computer.
It's mind-boggling to think about the sheer number of people involved in this network. It's a global problem.
For sure. And in the end, they were able to arrest 337 individuals connected to Welcome to Video.
337 arrests, that's a huge accomplishment. But I imagine there are still a lot of users out there who they couldn't identify.
Yeah, unfortunately, thousands of users never paid in Bitcoin, which means there was no financial trail to follow. So while cryptocurrency was really helpful in cracking this case, it also shows us that we can't rely on financial investigations alone. There are still criminals who are able to stay hidden.
So even with this investigation, there's still a lot of work to be done to protect children. What about Sun Jong-woo? What happened to him?
Well, he was sentenced to prison in South Korea, but the sentence was pretty lenient. He only served 18 months.
18 months for running the world's largest child abuse website. That doesn't seem right.
The American investigators were outraged. They wanted to extradite him so he could face charges in the U.S., but their request was denied.
I can't imagine how frustrating that must have been after all the work they put in.
Totally. But his release caused a huge public outcry in South Korea. Hundreds of thousands of people signed petitions demanding tougher sentences for these types of crimes.
Wow.
Yeah, and it actually led to some legislative changes that strengthened punishments for child sexual abuse offenses.
Yeah.
So his case did end up having a positive impact on the legal system.
That's good to hear. Speaking of legal battles, what happened with the U.S. Border Patrol agent? The one who was arrested for downloading content from Welcome to Video.
Well, he actually appealed his conviction, arguing that the IRS agents violated his Fourth Amendment rights by tracing his Bitcoin payments without a warrant. He's basically saying that Bitcoin transactions should be private.
He was trying to hide behind the anonymity of cryptocurrency. Did his argument work?
Nope. The court ruled that there's no expectation of privacy in Bitcoin transactions because the blockchain is a public ledger. Anyone can see that information.
So that's a huge win. It sets a precedent for future investigations.
Totally. The Welcome to Video case proved that criminals can't just use cryptocurrency to hide. And it also showed that law enforcement can use blockchain analysis to track down criminals.
Wow. This whole case has been both shocking and inspiring. We've seen how terrible people can be, but we've also seen the incredible power of technology and the dedication of these amazing investigators.
It really shows you what's possible when people work together to fight for justice.
They rescued children from horrible situations and helped to make the internet a safer place.
It's a powerful reminder that even in the darkest corners of the internet, there's still hope.
This story really makes you think about some big questions, like, is anything truly private in the digital age? And how can we balance the need for security with our right to privacy?
These are questions that we'll be grappling with for a long time.
I encourage all of you to keep thinking about the implications of this case and how it might affect the future of cryptocurrency and online investigations. We'll continue to explore these issues on future deep dives, but for now, thanks for listening.